Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
This week's video is sponsored by Middle Kingdom Wrestling. From one of the fastest rising markets for wrestling today, MKW brings you an incredibly diverse roster, featuring stars from China and all over the globe. MKW has been seen by millions of fans as they've showcased and helped develop wrestling in Nepal, Vietnam, Thailand, South Korea, and more, with more countries in their sights ahead. Witness the top pro wrestling organization in China today. Wrestling fans, your kingdom awaits. Find MKW on YouTube or go to MiddleKingdomWrestling.com. Well, for the last few classic pay-per-views, the original arc was like shows around the same time in the year 2000 across all these different companies, and then it kind of morphed into an ECW arc, going from Living Dangerously to One Night Stand 06, and now it reaches its proper ultimate conclusion of TNA Hardcore Justice 2010, The Last Stand, from August 8th, 2010, at the the Extreme Zone for the evening. This show was nominated on Patreon.com by Francisco Figueredo. I hope I got that name right. 1,100 people packed the venue. The show got around 20,000 buys. This was the 6th version of the pay-per-view that was originally called Hard Justice. So how do we get here? How did this become an ECW tribute show? Let's begin our journey with the July 15th Impact, when we saw the formation of EV 2.0, or Extreme version 2.0, debuting on Impact by beating up some wrestlers. The following week, 4 of those guys, it's Raven, Tommy Dreamer, Stevie Richards, and Rhino, joined forces with the recently kayfabe fired Mick Foley and showed up on TNA TV as invited guests of Dixie Carter. On that show, Dreamer gave a very passionate speech about how he watched TNA grow from where it began to where it was now, from nothing, very similar to the original ECW. He says he had closure in 2005, but then they brought ECW back and ruined everything, and he quit his cushy WWE job in protest. All he wants is one more chance to let ECW die the noble death it deserves or something. Therefore, Dixie Carter has bestowed their next pay-per-view date just for them, and thus Hard Justice became Hardcore Justice, one night to honor hardcore wrestling and the Extreme Warriors of yesteryear. What was meant to be the Hard Justice card was moved to the following Impact. Now, to TNA's credit, there was a bit of a misdirection at the beginning, but this was not booked as a straight-out invasion storyline on the level of what we saw on Raw in 1997, or in 2001 with the Alliance, or again in 2005, 2006. This is basically how they justified turning Hardcore Justice into the ECW tribute show, and once it was done, it was done. EV 2.0 would linger for several months after this in different forms and stuff, and Hardcore Justice as a brand would continue, but the ECW tribute thing died off after that 1 year in 2010. So I will give them credit, to TNA that is, for not trying to milk this thing and trying to make it all about ECW. However, though, I don't know how much longer they could have gone in stretching it out to make it about ECW, especially you can see this just from the opening moments of this pay-per-view.
I was part of a revolution.
This is where I became a star. It is where I made my career.
Where I made my name.
Yes, there is the tricky matter of the fact that WWE owns all the names and the imagery and the rights to the original ECW, so what does TNA do instead? They just find some other archived pictures from the same time period from other photographers. This reminds me, tell me if you know about this. In 2000, there was a made-for-TV movie released called Two of Us, and it's this dramatized account of one day between Paul McCartney and John Lennon hanging out in 1976. But then I remember seeing like a sketch comedy show, I think it was either SNL or Mad TV, around the same time doing a joke about this movie, saying, what happens when you have these two icons of music but don't have the rights to any of their music? You have them open up a donut shop. That's what Hardcore Justice reminded me right off the bat, showing all these other video, not even video footage, just pictures, old archival pictures of the wrestlers in ECW. And of course, they can't mention ECW by name, and so they have to get around it by all these other different ways of describing it. And we'll see this permeated throughout the entire show. It will be referred to as that hardcore company in Philadelphia, that Philadelphia company, those extreme warriors, all these different ways of getting around the trademark, and even then they're not very good at staying with that. You'll hear on commentary them name dropping ECW a lot in this. I'm not sure if there was any financial punishment or penalty for what they did naming ECW on their pay-per-view. They certainly alluded to it enough that I think WWE probably had the right to shut this show down. At one point, even the first match, Mike Tenay just goes, legally we can't say some things on this show, so we gotta work around it, but they do a bad job at that. Taz welcomes everyone to the show and says, it's gonna get extreme. I looked into their eyes, no doubt about it, Cole. The haters say winners the Bush League promotion. We were blood and guts, but we revolutionized this business, and that's a shoot. We were the true renegades. We were the little engine that could. Interesting note to de-escalate from renegades to little engine that could. Opening match is a six-man tag as the FBI, that's Guido Maritano, Tony Luke, and Tracy Smothers take on Kid Kash, Simon Diamond, and Johnny Swinger. Really inspired entrance videos for this show, just their names in front of a yellow background. They worked really hard on those. Kash gets a nice little welcome back reception. Tony Mama Luke, by the way, is referred to as Tony Luke, which is a bit of a double entendre, because on the one hand, it gets around any of the copyright stuff, the trademark things from WWE. Also, Tony Luke's is the name of a very famous and very good, I might add, Philly cheesesteak place in Philadelphia, just a few blocks away from the old ECW arena. Fabulous Philly cheesesteaks, by the way. We discover very soon this weird blue lighting is not just for entrances, it's for the entire damn show, and it's very weird to see. In the middle of the match, Simon Diamond is blown up as he grabs the mic and says, Simon Diamond has a problem, which gets a very loud, hearty, bleeped out, shut the fuck up chant. He blames Kash for his team's problems, then he challenges the FBI to a dance-off, and Diamond and Swinger dance very badly in the middle of the ring. Smothers says Michael Jackson just rolled over in his grave and says if they can't do better, straight up everybody dies. They all dance in the ring, wrapping up with Sally Graziano in there. The baddies jump Tony Luke and Guido, but Sal clotheslines them out. They fight on the outside, Kid Kash launching off the referee's back in a springboard off the ropes, a plancha onto the waiting crowd of guys below. So I guess the match continues. Kash and Tony Luke with some good work here. Kash power slamming Tony in the corner. Get a big Tower of Doom with Luke at the tippy top. The fans are already chanting, this is awesome. I'm like, really? Smothers is taken out. A missile drop hit by Tony and Luke. Then Kid Kash with a damn double underhook pile driver looks really snug. Diamond gets Guido on his shoulders, but Guido slips off, hits the unprettier, and wins. I give this match 2 stars out of 5, and I base a lot of that on the work of Kid Kash and Tony Luke. They were the 2 hardest workers in this match, with Guido Maritano kind of like a close second place compared to them. Tracy Smothers shows he could still go at his age at this point in time. This match had a lot of shtick going on in here, with a lot of the heavy lifting done between those aforementioned 2 guys in Kash and Luke. Tenay and Taz, by the way, I forgot to mention, Mike Tenay does play-by-play for this show. They're talking up the show, and then we see a Where Are They Now package with Todd Gordon, Pitbull Gary Wolf, and the Blue Meaning. They all say, hey, wish they could be there. And then we get this, the first of a recurring series that I think really just highlights the deficiencies that TNA had to work with here, and the fact they did this whole ECW show and couldn't show you literally any of it. It's the first of the I Remember segments in which TNA stars vaguely recall their recollections about what happened in the original ECW, with no script and no B-roll to cover up what they're talking about. Here AJ Styles talks about when Tommy Dreamer got hit a bunch with Sandman Singapore Kane. It sounds like drunk history, or like he's recalling what somebody else told him about it third hand. Like, Tommy Dreamer and Sandman had this match, right? And the loser got hit with a cane, not 3 times, but 10 times. So Tommy loses the match, and Sandman keeps hitting him, and then Tommy goes, thank you, sir, may I have another? And gets another one, and the fans like, no, Sandman, don't do it. But then Sandman, he's a hardcore guy, so he keeps hitting Tommy with the cane, and that's how Tommy Dreamer became an ECW legend. Meanwhile, Angelina Love chimes in saying, we didn't get to watch that show until its last year of existence, which I'm sure everyone wants to be reminded about. She also talks about how wild and loud the crowds were back then. Backstage, we see Al Snow yelling at Head and telling him to stop chanting those letters or they'll get sued. He yells at Head for his drinking and whoring, according to Snow. Then Stevie Richards consoles Al. Snow goes on, and I think he's waiting for Nova to come and cut him off, because Al does that thing where you say your line and you wait for the cue and it doesn't happen, so you just kind of make some shit up.
Stevie, do you really, honestly, do you know a good therapist? Because I could use one.
Yo, what?
Hollywood Nova finally appears. He and Snow rag on each other. Snow brings up the Simon Dean scooter and the fact they can't even use the BWO logo. Nova brings in a replacement for the Blue Meanie. Definitely not him. It's Big Tilly, aka Big Rocco, part of Phi Delta Slam and some various bodyguard gimmicks. How are we going to have just seen the real Blue Meanie in that highlight package not too long ago, and now we see this abomination? And then some guy walks in picking his nose while holding a small blow-up doll. He said he bought all of Nova's supplements, and Nova goes, "Those are just fake, kid. I didn't sell anything." What was this segment? That's where it ends, is Nova just walking off telling the kid, those are all fake, it was a hoax. This gave off the vibe that they all rehearsed it maybe one time before recording it, and this would be aired for posterity on the pay-per-view. I felt that, Hollywood Nova looked like he wanted to be anywhere else but in that segment, and Al Snow, God bless him, he was going at such a fast pace, nobody could catch up with him. This was just, and the fake Blue Meanie shrieking around, and then there's that aforementioned skinny kid picking his nose. I had to figure out, I'd look up who he was, because I didn't watch TNA around this time, and my jaw dropped. That's Sam Shaw. That's Dexter Loomis, who's there right now. The future guy at NXT with the bug eyes and the blonde hair and everything. He is unrecognizable today from where he was back then. Shocking transformation. In your next match, C.W. Anderson takes on Too Cold Scorpio. Some good grabs to start things off. Scorpio hitting C.W. with a dropkick out of the ring, corkscrew to the outside. C.W. is able to cut off Scorpio with a super kick, but Scorpio comes back with a kick of his own. Anderson dodges some shots and decks Too Cold with one shot. Great facial expression by Scorpio on the landing too. Action picks up. I love how Scorpio slaps the leg for a kick that does not connect, and he gets decked on the apron. Scorpio hits a front roll, goes for a moonsault, but C.W. puts up the knees and hits a spine buster. We get a kick out. Scorpio cuts off Anderson with a super kick, hits the backflip leg drop, which always looks impressive, and wins. And afterwards, we get some sportsmanship. Hooray! This match gets 2.5 stars out of me. I think this match put them both in a pretty good light. Scorpio showing he can still bust out some moves even at his age, and CW doing a lot of basic things, but doing them very, very effectively. Another I Remember segment. Madison Rain says the Philadelphia promotion put hardcore wrestling on the map, and that TNA is a lot like the Philadelphia promotion because they have hot girls and badass guys. Meanwhile, Matt Morgan worked at a bar where the Philadelphia promotion ran a show there. People came in by the drones to see it. Mr. Anderson talks about how that company brought some edge to the PG world of wrestling. Backstage, TNA World Champion Rob Van Dam and Bill Alfonso having a real organic chat.
Fonzie, Daddy, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great, RVD.
They talk about how Jerry Lynn was supposed to wrestle Van Dam on this night, but he hurt his back training, so a replacement is needed. So who best embodies that hardcore spirit? RVD says it's going to be Sabu as Lynn's replacement. And so he and Fonzie talk about, the conflict of interest here, because Fonzie had managed both RVD and Sabu at different points in their career. He says, "I know it's awkward, Fonzie." Yeah, like every other backstage bit we've seen tonight. But Fonzie says, "I'm going to call it right down the middle, Daddy." So wait a minute, call it down but you're not reffing the match. What do you mean by that? Up next, Stevie Richards accompanied by not quite the BWO. You've got Hollywood Nova and the Blue Tilly taking on PJ Polaco, the former Just Incredible. Richards, of course, is one of the handful of full-time TNA roster members who's actually working this ECW tribute show. After some knees and some chops exchanged, Stevie launches PJ into one corner, throws him balls first into the opposite ring post. PJ with a suplex on the outside, Polaco with a slingshot splash to the outside as well. Polaco working over Richards, little sit-out powerbomb, swinging DDT. Stevie catches PJ's legs in the corner, throws him over the top rope, and PJ face plants onto the steel steps. Very incredible exchange here between Taz and Tenay during this match.
BW 2.0.
I guess that's a variation on EV 2.0.
Yep.
Yep.
Big Stevie Cool hits a powerbomb of his own. We get a kick out. Stevie goes for a flying nothing, but walks into a super kick. That's incredible pile driver, but Hollywood Nova gets on the apron and distracts PJ. Polaco with some jaw jacking. That's not just the coolest. That's not just the best. That's just a super kick by Stevie, and Richards wins the hard-fought contest. After the match, Polaco dinks Richards in the head with the Singapore cane and poses. The lights cut off. Tenay goes, "Oh, what the hell? It's the Sandman." Justin goes for an attack, but need I remind you, Sandman is a cane-type Pokemon, has no effect on him. Sandman grabs both canes and breaks one of them and places it awkwardly on Justin's chest and walks away. Cool. I also give this one 2.5 stars. This one didn't do much for me. It was like a middle-of-the-road match. The crowd was into it the whole way through at least, and everything was fine in the ring, but beyond that, nothing much I can really talk about. Time for another Where Are They Now? Francine is a mom these days. Lots of stretching by Taz and TNA on commentary, just gushing over how great this show's been and how different it feels. And then after they're done stretching and everything, they toss to what I think is going to be an in memoriam package, because they're like, let's honor the Extreme Warriors of the past from this Philadelphia promotion that have lost their lives. And then we just get this full screen, this white text on a black background thanking the dead wrestlers for their contributions to the company. And that's all they get. There's no names, there's no pictures, there's no nothing. It's just, here's a catch-all shotgun blast. Here's our black slate for the dead wrestlers, and that's all you get. What? Because you can't have an ECW tribute show without one, time for a three-way dance between Al Snow, Rhino, and Brother Runt, aka Spike Dudley. Rhino tackles Snow out of the ring early on. Rhino goes to the gore on Runt, but Snow trips up Rhino from the outside. Runt throws Rhino out of the ring and dives onto his two opponents, but he's caught, hucked over their heads onto the steel ramp. Al goes for a springboard leg drop, but misses. He headbutts Rhino and hits the top rope moonsault. We get a kick out. As the TNA locker room watches the show, Snow grabs his head but is thwarted. Runt with a double stomp to Snow. He goes to the acid drop, but Rhino throws him off. Runt attacks Snow and Rhino, but they throw him again and he flies out of the ring. The referee's down now. Snow grabs head and takes out Rhino. Runt's got the chair, does the Eddie Guerrero spot where he pretends to get hit with a chair. Snow does it right back to Runt, give him the double deuce before falling down. That was awesome. Runt with the acid drop on Snow off of Rhino's body. Snow's eliminated. Then right after that pinfall, Rhino hits Runt with the gore seconds later and wins. This one gets 3 stars out of 5 for me. Obviously, like the last part of the match after Snow's elimination wasn't very long, but I think that the tale they told and the walk they took to get to that point was very entertaining. There was some thrills and spills, some comedy thrown in. I think it was a good overall package here. Mick Foley reading from Hulk Hogan's latest book, talking about the Tommy Dreamer Raven match he's refereeing. He says he's fought on both sides of this war and knows these two very well. He promises to be there and make the count. Well, I mean, you're the scheduled referee, Mick, so that's the least you could do. In the latest I Remember, Magnus talks about the hardcore originals and how they raised the bar and show what they could do. Then we see Chris Sabin talking about watching a barbed wire match between Sabu and Terry Funk for the first time and how it inspired him, how the biggest stars of ECW were the kind of wrestler he wanted to be. So far from this one soundbite from Sabin, it's a lot more convincing than anything else we've heard from anyone else so far in the I Remember segment. Out to the ring come Axel Rotten and Kahoneys, aka Balls Mahoney. I gotta say, if you're Balls Mahoney and you're trying to get around the legality issue of using that name in a TNA show because like WWE owns a trademark, calling yourself Kahoneys with the same spelling as Mahoney, pretty fucking clever. Kahoneys says he and Axel don't have a match tonight and they're pissed, issuing an open challenge, and well, Joel Gertner shows up alongside Team 3D. They're wearing the tie-dye, not coming out to music, perfect old school stuff for the Dudleys here. Gertner with a very drawn out rhyming intro, talks about Lady Gaga and poking her face, almost introduces the guys as the Dudley Boys before he's stopped and gives them the proper name. Bully Ray says these fans don't want a wrestling match between these guys, so let's have a South Philly street fight. The brawl begins right away, Kahoneys with Bully, Axel with Devon. As the fighting continues, more good times at commentary.
Brother Ray, that's a lot of size drilling right into Kahoneys. That just sounds funny.
Wait, it just rolls right off the tongue, doesn't
sure
it?
Does.
Bully Ray and Kahoneys out in the crowd. Bully Ray, master of props. He hits Kahoneys with head and a water bottle. Devon grabs a replica ECW belt from a fan and decks Axel. Bully with many boops to the head with head. They all head back to the ring and more plunder shows up. Kahoneys smacks a trash can lid on Bully. It goes for a flying sit, but he misses. Frying pan to Kahoneys and that disgusting thud.
Brother Ray, oh God.
That's one of those non-stick pans.
Suddenly, Kahoneys produces a lightsaber. Devon tosses another one to Brother Ray. They has laser sword fight. Bully gets impaled by the saber, but he fights back and hits Kahoneys in the, well, you know. Bubba busts out a dance. Rotten hits him with a reverse DDT, but it looks like Bubba's doing all the work. And now we go back to the more painful stuff. We get double chair fights. Team 3D go down. Rotten and Kahoneys get in the referee's face and they run him into the ropes. Duck the line. Finnegan tries one of his own, but it has no effect. What is happening in this match? Team 3D hit Kahoneys with the was up. They summon the tables and Gertner brings the lighter fluid. The table's on fire. Powerbomb to Kahoneys through the flaming table. Team 3D win the match. I think it was a big wild brawl with a really silly interlude in the middle. Like the lightsaber thing I thought was fine, but then when they get the referee involved as well, I think that was taking away too much from this war. But oh, it does get worse, because after the match, Bully on the mic saying Team 3D is the greatest team in the world, when suddenly the Gangstas appear. New Jack and Mustafa Saeed back together for only the second time since they split in 1997, and they come with weapons. The Gangstas just beat the hell out of Bully and Devon with everything. The kitchen sink, a staple gun, hockey stick, you name it. New Jack grabs the guitar and is waiting and waiting and waiting for Joel Gertner, but the stud muffin misses his cue, walks in late and gets El Kabonged. And then all 6 of the wrestlers hug and raise their arms, and I didn't care for that one bit. Save the hugging for the back if you're going to do that. I think if you want to compare this to, say, the curtain call at Madison Square Garden, I think the difference between the two of these is the curtain call at Madison Square Garden was specifically intended for a very small audience, just the people in the house that night, and then some fan cam footage got released, and the rest is history. Meanwhile, Hardcore Justice is a pay-per-view theoretically shown in millions of people's homes, and in front of a live crowd and everything. It's not like the cameras were off to show a commercial or something. They were doing this just off air for the live crowd. They were doing the whole thing, and I think that context is important. After beating the hell out of each other with weapons the way they did, for them to just all of a sudden hit a switch and they're buddy-buddy. Even if they are buddy-buddy and stuff, I thought that was a really weird moment to do that in. I think save that for the end of the show, like what we got was a big, everyone else coming out, and I'll get to that, but I didn't care for this. I'm sorry. Raven recaps all his history with Tommy Dreamer in about 40 seconds or less. When they were kids, how the dynamic changed when they got older, then Dreamer stole Raven's girl and married her. He says that Dreamer's a glory hog, and that's what this match is really about to Dreamer. Raven says that Tommy broke his heart, so now he will shatter Tommy's soul. We get another I Remember. Jesse Neal talks about that hardcore company, seeing them live in Florida when he was 16 years old. Then Kaz talks about doing workouts with the ECW guys whenever they came through Massachusetts while he was training. Says the roots of the X Division comes from guys like Rob Van Dam and Jerry Lynn. Thank you. It took an hour 40 plus, but we finally got a soundbite in this miserable segment that actually has a clear, tangible connection between TNA and ECW. The guys from ECW inspired the X Division today. Boom. Kaz and Chris Sabin were the ones that were the closest to really getting what this segment was about, or had the best sound bites for it. AJ Styles kind of comes in a distant third place, only because of his passion and trying to recount. He was the only one who had a specific moment to actually retell. And so then you have Sabin and Kaz, who actually do a really good job kind of bridging that gap between the high flyers and the hardcore guys of ECW, and how that translates to today's TNA product. We get a bunch of wrestlers giving a shout out to Joey Styles, how much he's missed. They talk about it as if he were dead. It's really weird. Styles, of course, was working for WWE's website team at this time in 2010. So it makes sense that, I understand why they didn't even show a picture of Styles, even if they had archival pictures of him. But it's still the way they talked about him, it's like he had died. Time for the final showdown. Raven versus Tommy Dreamer, with Mick Foley as your guest referee. Raven and Dreamer, they got history. That's basically the easiest way you could describe the feud between these two, stretching decades back from ECW days. But for all but 1 or 2 encounters, Dreamer has never been able to defeat Raven, so will the tide turn this time? Also, apparently Dreamer injured his ACL only a couple weeks before the show, so mad props to anything he does in this match while working through that, period. As Foley gives his instructions, Raven kicks things off literally with Dick Kick City, brawling on the outside, Russian leg sweep into the barricade by Raven. Dreamer grabs a beer, using it as a weapon. Taz on commentary, pining for the good old days when he used to ride with Dreamer and Heyman. Well, those days are long gone now, Cole. We got older, we got families. It's time to put away childish things, Cole. Growing up sucks, no doubt about it. Meanwhile, Raven drop toe holds Dreamer face first into the chair. Dreamer gets bludgeoned and split open, not just in front of Dixie Carter at ringside, but in front of Dreamer's wife Beulah and their twin daughters. That's good childhood trauma. Dreamer bleeding some more, but he hits Raven with a drop toe hold of his own to the chair. There's a sign that tells Tommy to use it. Dreamer hits him and it makes quite a clank. Dreamer reveals it's a dead end sign in disguise. Now Raven is bleeding. Dreamer on the attack starts biting Raven. Tommy slings Raven into a ladder bridge. Raven sitting on the top rope. Dreamer goes after him, but he slips through the ladder rungs and gets crotched. We get a really ugly looking knee drop by Raven from the top. Dreamer kicks out. Raven goes with the even flow, but Dreamer counters into the Spicoli driver. Tree of Woe and the dropkick into the street sign. Dreamer wraps barbed wire around Raven's face. Just this grotesque image here. Nova and the Blue Tilly run in and jump Dreamer and referee Foley. Tilly goes for a top rope splash, but he misses. Dreamer takes both he and Nova out. Raven hits the DDT, but we get a 2 count. Raven's frustrated with Foley, who fights back. Mandible Sacco, but they can't even say Sacco. Raven's lackey Lupus, that's Sam Shaw by the way, he hits Dreamer with a guillotine leg drop, but he gets taken down by Foley. Foley grabs the barbed wire, wraps it around his own hand, mandible claw to Lupus. Meanwhile, Raven has handcuffed Dreamer this whole time and whomps him with the chair, wants to go in for the kill, but then Beulah appears to calm Raven down. Don't do it. You know what happens to wives in ECW? Raven dinks Dreamer, wants to hit Beulah, but Foley gets involved. He gets hit in the dick. Beulah hits a low blow. Raven with a big old feed into Dreamer's arm for a DDT, and Raven kicks out. Raven hits the knee of Dreamer with the chair. Another even flow. Raven wins this bloody bout. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. Probably one of the best, if not the best match of the night. These guys just beat the hell out of each other. Very violent, bloody affair. This was a hardcore match, or like a weapons-based match that I could get behind. I think was treated a lot more seriously than the street fight we had with Team 3D and Kahoneys and Rodden earlier. Jeremy Borash and SoCal Val hanging out backstage when the gangsters show up and accost them both. Mustafa walks away with Val while New Jack lets JB know that he's his bitch now, so that's nice.
Your bitch?
My bitch.
I'm your bitch?
As of right now, my bitch.
In the final video package, everyone thanks Paul Heyman and they talk about his vision and his passion in ECW. Raven describes him as the Scorsese to his De Niro. Simon Diamond calls him the Messiah of the Internet, so I'm glad to see Heyman's not the only one with a penchant for hyperbole. Sandman can't bother to make eye contact as he calls him the greatest booker in wrestling at that point. In your main event, in a non-title affair, you got the TNA champion Rob Van Dam taking on the homicidal, genocidal, death-defying Sabu. As I mentioned, Jerry Lynn was supposed to be facing RVD in the main event here, but just days before, he threw out his back, which led to Sabu being the replacement. Fonzie, Bill Alfonso, he said he would call it right down the middle, daddy, and he wasn't lying because he actually comes out accompanying both guys to the ring. He is like as babyface of a manager as he can be because he helps both guys pretty evenly in this contest. As the match begins, Sabu removes his headgear to reveal his bald look. That was a new look for him. And then Taz goes, hey, in case you didn't know, Cole, Sabu shaved his head. We get a "This is classic" chant as the match begins. A lot of shtick and posing in the first several minutes. Fonzie slides a chair in the middle of the ring, and we get a tug of war. Sabu wins and throws it in RVD's face. Get the springboard leg lariat in the corner. Sabu dropkicks RVD over the barricade. Sabu sets the chair up and like, oh my God, it's gonna, oh no, don't do that, Sabu. But sure enough, he jumps off the chair, lands on the rope perfectly, and goes over the barricade into RVD. I wonder how much of the crowd pop was for the move itself or the fact that he actually landed it. Taz on commentary going on and on about the ghost of ECW. Sabu works over RVD here, working the neck, but Van Dam kicks the chair into the leg of Sabu. Van Dam hits the monkey flip and Sabu gets some of the chair, but he takes all of it when it's thrown into his face. A cool moment where they both think of bouncing off the second ropes in the same corner, colliding in midair. Fonzie gets in the ring, giving each man a water break chant breaks out. Okay, that was actually a really good use of Alfonso here in the match. After the water break chant, though, the crowd is kind of dead for this match. They certainly sound tired, if nothing else. And then, of course, Taz chimes in with some more eloquent, iconic commentary.
You get kicked by Van Dam, it's like getting hit by something that hurts.
RVD with the twisting leg drop over the barricade, another leg drop onto a chair on the apron. RVD goes up top, but Fonzie tosses Sabu a chair, who uses it on Van Dam. A lovely springboard Hurricane Rana, and RVD lands perfectly on the chair. I gotta admit, we have not seen any egregious botches from Sabu in this matchup. He put on his working puffy pants for this one, because like how many times have you seen footage of Sabu just blatantly horrifically fucking some move up. One that he's done hundreds of times, no less, but he screws it nonetheless. But he does it here, and he nailed everything. I was in shock. RVD trips Sabu into a chair. Sabu now bleeding from the back of his head. Van Dam makes Fonzie hold the chair as he hits the Van Assassin, a top rope variation of the Van Daminator. Never seen that one before. Van Dam kicks Sabu and gets ready for a move that one fan has definitely studied up on. Sabu with a twisting DDT onto a chair. He goes to the Arabian leg drop through a table, but RVD moves. Van Dam hits the 5-star frog splash and wins. This one gets 3 out of 5 stars for me. I think what really surprised me with this one and made me help enjoy it a lot more was how much I expected the worst from Sabu here, but how he really pulled it together, and really I think he wrestled a clean match. I don't think he screwed up once, so color me impressed, but I think that even though the match was solid and was like a decent main event, I think that there was some some awkward moments in the matchup. At points they were wrestling in slow motion, it felt like. Definitely not the same guys that they were when they were feuding 15 years ago or some odd like that. Even the difference between One Night Stand 06 and 2010 with both these guys, especially Sabu. But despite their limitations getting a little bit older, I think they were still able to put together a pretty good match, especially on such short notice. RVD goes in for a handshake, but Sabu says, "Brother's got a hug." You know, I don't know why this one doesn't upset me as much as the South Philly Street Fight curtain call. Maybe it has to do with, maybe this one doesn't devalue all the weaponry and plunders so much. Then out come the rest of the ECW alum. They make their way out to the ring. They have beers and they party in the ring. There's a big "fuck you Vince" chant from the crowd. You know what? For what he did to ECW's memory, that seems pretty fair. Dreamer on the mic thanks Dixie Carter for the show, says that was one hell of a pay-per-view. Was it though? Thanks the crowd as we fade to black. My final grade for TNA Hardcore Justice 2010 is a C+. I think that actually this show was closer in spirit to One Night Stand 05 than One Night Stand 06 was, and that this is a straight up ECW tribute show meant for the nostalgic feels, a one-off, and that was it. But a mere 5 years after the first One Night Stand, I think the Lightning was not going back in the bottle, and they could not recapture the magic of that first ECW tribute show. There were some glimmers of the past on display that looked okay there. I think it's a show that, like, Dreamer, who organized the show, and the rest of the ECW guys can hang their hats on. I think it was, you know, is a show they can be overall proud of. It was a solid show, but solid's about the best I can use to describe it, because there was nothing else about it that really felt good in terms of match quality or overall enjoyment. There was some good, but there was a lot of bad as well. It doesn't measure up. It's hard, even though the standard is impossibly set by One Night Stands 05 and 06. TNA just could not measure up to that, and they tried, but you know, for a lot of reasons, they just could not do what WWE did. But despite those limitations, like, they still had, like, you know, an ECW tribute show, and that's okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed my review of Hardcore Justice 2010. If you want to play a role in determining which shows I look at, be they good, bad, or somewhere between, go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret, become a $10 backer or above, and you'll have a chance to nominate classic shows for me to review. Next time, we're not doing the year 2000, we're not doing ECW or any of its derivatives, we're going to WCW in the year 1998. Now, it's a pivotal year for a lot of the players, or some of the players at least, during that time period. You may recall The Last Dance, that Michael Jordan docu-series recently aired here in real time in 2020. So let's look back at a pivotal point in one of Michael Jordan's teammates and one of his chief rivals at the time, Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone respectively. I'm talking about Bash the Beach 1998. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.
BW 2.0.
I guess that's a variation on EV 2.0.
Yep.
Yep.